Because that's what we are.
Now I know you're talking about in that lesson. When you were saying about right, but she was already that's the person you're talking about. When you were saying that.
I imagine it will be a group.
To be honest, I think it's okay because they're in a room.
So they're definitely going
They definitely have the link. I think you would just they took it out there.
That doesn't make a music, it is Christian Cole. No, does that have to give you an introduction? All right.
There's a 10,000 way track. You've got a very attractive shoulder, I just don't know if they'll that's it. No, I'm sorry, that is my bad.
still alive, yeah. Dad, why are you in a tree yesterday? Yeah, you were in a tree. What was your job? My brother's in another. No, just the one. Right one is that. Right one was on my left. Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
My favorite.
I actually want to go. So. Change your profile picture. That's a big case.
I saw this one. I know, it's nice. It's actually nice.
Okay. Welcome everybody to this evening's event, which is Making Languages Work for You, which is a fantastic panel that we've got for you today of graduates from languages, linguistics and film, but also from University of London in Paris. And I'm really delighted to say that for the first time, we are live streaming this event to our students in Paris who are going to be watching in and participating in our panel and asking questions. So really delighted to get that started. So before we actually kick off with the kind of today's questions and hear from our panel and hear their stories, I just wanted to frame why we're here today. Because we all know as languages students that languages are so important for your life, to have lifestyle benefits, benefits to your health, to your cognitive abilities, but we're really here to talk about how does it help you in your career? Does it help you be more fulfilled? Does it help you in terms of getting a job and in the types of things that you can do in the job as well? Like what doors does it open? Okay, and I want the panel today to be really, really honest with you because I want you to leave here thinking, buzzing with ideas and kind of knowing where to go next. So alongside this though, there are these massive kind of social and like technological and political changes going on. And it feels really fitting that today, with all of the Brexit chaos, we're here talking about, okay, you know, working in the UK using languages, but also working abroad in the EU and internationally. Okay, and how do we navigate this with all of the stuff that's going on politically and technologically at the moment? So we're going to talk about that. So, what the format of today is going to be is that I'm going to start off by asking a few questions to our panelists. We'll then take a bit of a pause so that you guys can reflect a bit on what you've heard and discuss with the person next to you. And then I'm going to open up the floor for the second half of the event to your questions. Okay, we're going to take written questions, and we're going to take hands-up questions as well as hearing from our friends in Paris, what they think as well. And then, which everyone hope is looking forward to, we'll have some nice wine and nibbles, and hope that you'll be able to stay to network with our panelists and with each other towards the end of the evening. So, without further ado, I will get cracking. So, what I'm going to do, I think, is kind of introduce you briefly and then ask a bit of a general question to you all before we dive into your individual career stories, okay? So, framing the conversation today, I would really like to hear from you guys. Having now worked for a few years in the labour market, what is the value, do you think, of a languages degree? Okay, in today's society, in today's economy, is a languages degree important from your personal point of view? Okay, and be as honest as you possibly can. So I'm going to start with you, Megan. Sure. So Megan is the International Business Director for the podcast company Acast, and you've been working kind of in London, but in Paris as well in your previous job. So what do you think the value of a languages degree actually is?
I mean, I think it's something that employers always love, and regardless, I think whenever I've sort of been to an interview, even if the job doesn't necessarily say French speaking on it, it's something that's always really important. And I've never worked in a job, even when I've sort of been UK based, where at some point somebody hasn't gone, well, you speak Spanish, don't you, or you speak French, because they've got translation, or, I mean, so I work in advertising, and so it's always working with companies where they want to open up more markets. So I think that's kind of the value. Like your world is a bit bigger than if you were just sort of doing business in the UK. You can add that extra bow then to your skill set, I think. And I think employers, like particularly, I can only talk from sort of marketing, advertising kind of side of things. But I think it's always something where they think, this person could come in and not only manage maybe some of the UK stuff, but also there's potential there for us to go further and make more money and kind of, and make our brand bigger. So I think it kind of opens doors for you, whether or not you think to begin with that job is specifically language focused or not.
Okay, so it's not necessarily something that has been essential in what you've been doing, but it's definitely opened doors.
Definitely.
And
yeah.
I liked what you said, it kind of gives you a bit of like a wider
I think so.
vision.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Daniel, so you are working in, you've been working all over the world in consultancy, helping companies, and countries kind of invest in different areas.
Yeah.
And I suppose using your languages in that, but what do you think is the value of a languages degree?
Well, I concur with Megan in that it's definitely something that employers welcome. It's always a bonus whenever you're looking to take on a new job. It's almost twofold, my story, in that I wanted to do a master's after doing my French degree in Paris, and I was very much interested in EU, European affairs, European politics. So at that stage, a language was a prerequisite because the course that I was doing in Poland was in English and French, so I continued almost that language usage, as it were. And then it kind of died off for the first few years. I moved into policy advocacy and communications in Eastern Europe primarily. I was living in Hungary for a year and a half. And yeah, my language skills weren't really required in those early days, but as I moved on to through my career, 5-6 years into my career, still at that stage in communications consulting, the language skills came out of the woodwork, as it were, and it became increasingly useful whether I was working with colleagues on a new business assignment or a client assignment in Paris or Brussels. More recently, when I moved to Indonesia to establish the EU's representative office in the Indonesian Board of Investment, two of the countries that I was working with most frequently, and by countries I mean the embassies in Indonesia, were the embassies of France and Belgium. Mm-hmm. So I was working with those officers in French on a daily basis. I was working with investors, business delegations, politicians who would come. So really, it's one of those things that immediately it didn't have an immediate application in my career, mm-hmm. but it became and remains very, very useful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And kind of, I'm asking you, I suppose, because you're probably the most politically involved out of everybody who's on the panel today, in terms of your job.
Yeah.
What about Brexit? You know, given with Brexit on, you know, looming on the horizon, what are the prospects for someone with a languages degree now? Are they better? Are they worse?
I think they're certainly better. I mean, it's very easy to say the doom and gloom Brexit scenario is that Britain is going to sever its ties with mainland Europe. Firstly, I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you're going to see there's going to be an abundance of opportunities for language graduates, whether it's graduates in the languages of our near neighbours, either European languages or indeed other languages from further afield, so the languages of Asia, Southeast Asia, Russia, and others. They will become increasingly important for two reasons. I'd say, firstly, you're going to see, I think, the civil service here in the UK ramping up its machinery significantly in the next few years. We had our Foreign Secretary, at least Foreign Secretary today, announcing 1,000 new diplomats quite recently. Beyond the Foreign Office here in London, you've got departments like the Department for International Development, DFID, the Department for International Trade, who are going to be on a major recruitment drive in the next few years, and that includes fresh young graduates who speak one or a multitude of foreign languages. So if you're looking to get into public sector and government work, I think there will be opportunities in the years to come. And then, quite simply, I think an increasing number of businesses who are concerned about where their opportunities will be in Europe in the years to come have already and continue to look further afield for opportunities, whether that's in Asia, Latin America, or elsewhere. So they'll be looking for young, smart people who can bring language skills to the table as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunities in this post-Brexit world, whatever that will end up being.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that's really good to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, maybe later we'll talk a bit about, okay, we study languages, mostly European languages here at the moment. Are there other ones we should be learning as well? You know, if you've already got that head start, what do you think you should learn next? Miriam, over to you. So what do you think? You've graduated quite recently, 2015, and was then working abroad in Ibiza for a while. Now doing a lot of freelancing. What do you think is the value of a languages degree since you've left?
Well, obviously my experience is quite different. I started in the music industry, and I've never had a formal job interview because in the music industry everything is networking based. So, but I would say for me, the French degree has been such a great conversation starter. I've got so many funny analogies from my year abroad, and I've had so many, or just kind of like I complain about Paris, and I met people in Paris who were in dance music who've ended up introducing me to clients since I've gone freelance as well. But I just think cultural understanding is massively underestimated. And second of all, I would say really, really boring, but being able to look at language critically has been so good, because I do freelance copywriting as well. And it's just amazing how many people don't understand grammar at all. So that's quite handy too.
Okay, so it seems like it's opened up doors for you so far in terms of your network and getting business that you wouldn't otherwise have been open to. So would they have spoken in English, like these dance music acts?
We speak in French and English, but I think it's really, really appreciated having the language. And also, they send me their interview answers in French, and I just translate them for the journalists. So I can charge extra for that. So yeah, it's not massive, but every little helps.
Okay, great, thank you. And then Brandon, you have, I guess you left in 2016. And we're working in Ruby Pseudo consultancy, which is like a market research agency. We'll go into all of our panelists' jobs in a bit more detail next. But I'm just interested in your view, because your agency works not only in the UK, but is all about looking outward and understanding international consumers. What's the value of a languages degree today?
The language degree for me was, I always wanted to do a language degree from a young age. And it was because it was opening a new culture to me. It was able for me to see what culture looks like. You don't just learn the language, you learn the books, you learn the literature, you learn the philosophy, you learn the theories. It's a lot more than just the language that you speak every day. and you learn a different mindset, you learn different things, you learn the different mannerisms that a French person will have to what an English person has. We did a project with Tinder researching, and it was about romance and dating in France and in the UK. And the differences in dating in France is so incredible to how it is in the UK. In the UK, you go out, you get hammered. You go go to a pub, you get really drunk. In France, it's like, oh, we'll go for a coffee and see how it is. And it's like just those two very different things of where you go for your first date, and that's why I did a language degree. And it's really important because you mix with so many different people, you have to spend a year abroad. You have to go then put yourself in a completely different space where you've never been before. And then you come back, you finish, and then you're in the world, and you've got so much more skills than you do with other degrees where you're stuck in one place for 3 years. You've got 4 years to really push yourself further. And that's why I did a language degree. And I think that's why it's really important today.
Yeah, thanks. And you were kind of very, I suppose, similar to what Miriam was saying, just about that, cultural understanding these idiosyncrasies of the language and how people behave. You were also nodding when Dan was talking about kind of opportunities after Brexit.
Yeah, definitely.
Is that, I mean, do you agree that?
Yeah, definitely, I agree with that. I think Brexit is a real shame for the UK.
Yeah.
But having a language will really push us more with the mindset, especially of young people, to push us like, okay, we've been messed over by the old people who've pushed us out of Europe, but we want to make sure that we're not as exclusive and we're quite an inclusive country. And I think that's going to push the youth to kind of act on the mistakes that, or people would say mistakes we've made.
Yeah. And then just one further question, I suppose, on these big trends. So obviously with like the rise of artificial intelligence, more and more like language translation is getting done by computers and can be done automatically. Is that a threat to language graduates, or is there still going to be a place for, for languages in this context of more and more being done by computers? Anyone want to take that?
I mean, I think there's still a lot to be said for like a human touch on translation. Like I think machines can do a lot, but like in one of my previous jobs, I was working at an Indian company and I managed the French office, and we needed all the materials to be translated into French. And we found some services that were cheaper where you could just absolutely tell this was done by a machine, and it made sense, but it didn't have the localization, and it didn't have, it wouldn't be what I would say to somebody in France if I was presenting it. So I think there's always going to be that element of localizing it and making it French or Spanish. Yeah, I mean, maybe it will get so amazingly good that that won't be the case anymore. But I think you can definitely tell if something is automated or done by a machine.
Yeah, I would add to that and say that, I mean, in my line of work, email is still used. I mean, maybe email will be kind of, moved aside in the 5 to 10 years to come. But I would say one of the advantages you have as a language graduate is you're not only able to speak it, but you're hopefully able to write very, very well. And I find in my line of work, good, strong emails, whether it's to a prospective client, to an embassy or other stakeholder that's well written in the language, is crucial. And I don't think that artificial intelligence and Google Translate or whatever you use has quite got there yet. I mean, I know from my own experience when I was trying to, use Google Translate and things to get things from Indonesian into English, it came up as utter gobbledygook. And I'm sure there are better systems, but there's no substitute for, as you say, the human touch and the knowledge of how to use that language effectively.
Great. And I think what we're going to learn through the course of just hearing a bit more about your individual stories is all the different ways, apart from like direct translation, that you're using your languages day to day. So I think let's move on to that then. So I'm going to just spend a little bit of time with each of you unpicking your stories a bit, asking you some questions. I've done my kind of LinkedIn research, so I've got my questions primed. So Megan, going to you. So you did French and Hispanic studies and graduated in 2012. I think your first job was in spabreaks.com.
Yes, so that was kind of, I need to pay the bills and I don't want to work, I don't want to go move back home kind of job. So it was by no means kind of what I wanted to do for life, but it was kind of what I did for, like, I guess about a year when I came out of uni, while I was sort of working out what I wanted to do.
Sure. And then you moved into marketing and media sales. Yeah? How did you figure out that is what you wanted to do?
So I kind of fell into that, but that came up to me because it was a role that needed French, actually, and that's why I ended up doing that. So it was actually a media reseller for French media to UK agencies. So I was working with like TV stations, radio and press in France. So So like the French part of that would be the emails, liaising with publishers and phone calls and things. And
so
selling.
Do you mind, sorry to interrupt, so for me to get it straight, so you're working with agencies, helping businesses to place kind of
Yeah, so with UK companies or UK agencies who want to advertise in France.
Right,
yeah.
Okay, in a variety of different media.
Yeah, so that was, I think, a recruitment person. I really wanted to do spa break. Somebody contacted me, they were like, hey, you speak French, do you want to go for this role? And yeah, that's kind of how I got into media, really.
Do you remember which recruiter it was who was like,
That was a while ago.
Okay, no worries. Sure. It's just that it's good to know that recruiters were calling you and knowing and spotting you because you had a language.
Yeah, and I think that's still the case to a certain extent. Where I've moved around, there's always been somebody who's gone, actually we have this role and French is a kind of prerequisite or Spanish is prerequisite, and I think they do struggle sometimes to find somebody who has experience plus the language. So. Great.
So then it sounds like you kind of developing your career in marketing and media sales, and you were working for a Parisian tech company, which is Muzu.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you pronounce
Muzu,
that.
yeah.
Muzu. And now kind of broadening out, heading up like the sales division of this podcast company Acast, but not only in Europe, in the Middle East.
Yeah, so I moved across to, so Moby was my last role. I was there for about 2 years, specifically managing the France and Benelux teams. And so I sort of wanted to move something a bit broader, so I moved over to Acast where we monetize podcasts. They basically took me on it. It was a new role because they wanted to monetize all of their international inventory. And so there are focus countries such as like Netherlands and France in particular, but I've actually been very lucky with this role in terms of they told me you've worked internationally before, which markets do you see potential in, and where I've been placed before. Dubai is a big market, so I've actually kind of been fortunate enough that they've allowed me to go into various markets and build a business there. So yeah, currently we're working on France, we're working on Netherlands, we're working on the Middle East, which is the bits that I head up. So yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's exciting, yeah. And I think the French definitely kind of opened that up for me.
So can you give us a flavour of what you kind of do day to day in a role as international business director? What kind of thing is an average day?
Yes, it differs. So sometimes mainly I'll be in front of advertising agencies, so like the kind of, the innovation director or trading director or whatever they're called there, presenting, so a bit like an apprentice style pitch, but a bit better, I think. And so kind of pitching the product, or pitching kind of the audio landscape or podcasts in general. I can be in front of clients directly, so like next week I'll be over in Amsterdam dealing with like Adidas and Nike brands directly. I also have my boring days where I'm basically from the business that I create, sitting in the office with a bunch of planners and working out what it is we're actually going to sell to them. So it kind of differs greatly, but I think sort of what I hate most is sitting at a desk, so I really love my job in terms of I get to travel and I get to stand in front of people and pitch things and go and meet people for the first time. It's really exciting to me the moment that somebody high up in the brand goes, oh hey, come in and talk to us. I think, so that's basically my kind of day-to-day, talking with people.
So how much, can you quantify like how much travelling you have to do in an average month?
So in my last job, I was actually based here but managing the Paris office. I used to take the Eurostar every week for 3 days out of the week and then come back. So my boss actually called me the girl on the train for a while. Right now, so I guess, like next week I'll be in Amsterdam, the week after I'll be in Dubai, then I have a week back. So it just depends on the demand really, but I would say I travel probably at least like every kind of 2 to 3 weeks somewhere. If it's further afield, I'll stay there for a week or so. If it's just Amsterdam or France, then I'll pop over for say 2 days and then come back. Just depends on who I need to meet, really.
Okay, great. And it sounds like you're fairly regularly using you're using French for French clients.
Yeah, I think in particular, there are certain markets, so I don't speak Dutch, but I work in the Netherlands, and that seems to work fine, although I would say like what you do gain from languages as well is this kind of cultural understanding of how people tend to work, and it is quite different market to market. But France in particular is one where if you don't speak French you won't get a lot done. So yeah, that's really come in handy with me, with what I've been doing. And like I say, even with jobs where it wasn't a prerequisite to speak French or Spanish, there has always been a time, but they've got this. I remember I was a client in Brazil, and they were like, "You speak some Portuguese, don't you?" And I was like, "Sure."
Yeah.
So I think it just always comes up, and employers are always so happy that they've got you there to try and do that. However badly you speak Portuguese.
No, that's great. Thank you very much, Megan, for that kind of background. So moving on to you, Dan. So your title is Senior Investment Promotion Consultant.
What is that?
Kind of, yeah. What is that? Like, how would you describe it in a sentence or two?
Yeah, sure.
At the World Bank.
So investment promotion, for context, well, the World Bank, as you probably know, is a massive organisation based in Washington, close to 20,000 employees and consultants doing everything from trade and investment advisory through to healthcare advice, transportation, infrastructure advice, various different things. But our little unit, the area that we work, investment promotion, is all about advising countries, regions and cities on how they can best organise themselves to attract foreign companies who want to go and establish in their localities. So essentially it's a competitive game where if you imagine all the different countries, regions, city departments and agencies, you're talking about 15,000 entities around the world that are all clamouring for mobile businesses that are looking for their next footprint abroad. And what the World Bank does, what we do in investment promotion, is we advise those entities, be they national, city, regional, public and private, or just public, on how they can do better strategies, how they can organise themselves better, how they can have the right pitches to investors. We can train them. We do all sorts of different things with them and actually guide them onto getting the most in terms of what we call good investment, foreign investment. So bringing in capital into a market, but also creating good, sustainable jobs, high-skilled jobs, technology transfer, all of these things. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the World Bank is interested in this area. And it's not just about money, it's about skills, it's about upskilling people, it's about bringing in new technologies, patents, know-how, and all of these things.
So it's all about getting new investment and skills into other countries and making that smoother.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you, because you're, I suppose, the only person on the panel who's got a master's, was that a prerequisite for getting into this line of work in terms of investment and consultancy?
It was never officially put as a prerequisite.
Yeah.
I don't know of anyone in the small team we're working who doesn't have a master's. I think if you didn't have a master's but found different routes and had relevant experience in a particular area that the World Bank works in, they would consider that. Mm-hmm. But most people do typically have a master's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's good to know. Yeah. And you, it looks like after your master's you moved to Brussels.
Yes.
And did some kind of research and project management posts.
Yeah.
And then got your first gig as a consultant in Budapest.
That's right.
Is that right?
Well, so I basically slallomed around Europe for the best part of 7 years. I went to the British Institute.
And why was that? Like, why the slalom?
Well,
you know,
well, I suppose when I went to the university, to ULIP, I'd obviously signed myself up for 3 years, like most students, the age of 18. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do after that to begin with. But 3 years ended up turning into 7 in the sense that, as with all these, as with everyone, you know, you get into something while you're studying and one thing leads to another. But without telling my whole life story, it was at the British Institute in Paris where I got really interested in EU affairs. So a master's in European studies felt like a no-brainer for me. That took me to Warsaw in Eastern Europe. And we basically all decamped and went to Brussels after finishing our masters because it was the natural place to go and find work. And so, as you already said, I ended up in a research consultancy and also a think tank for the best part of a year, and that opened me up. That area I was working in was policy advocacy. That is something that bigger agencies in communications, PR agencies and communications consultancies do. So I then got an opportunity to go to Budapest. So I went back to Eastern Europe and spent some time there working in PR and communications. And then after 7 years living Europe, I thought it might be nice to actually come back home and see what it was like to live back in the UK. So I moved back to London, stayed in the communications industry for some time. But it was at that stage, and this was kind of 5-6 years into my career, where I was doing a few different things. I think I eventually found my feet and thought, actually, this niche area of nation branding, of destination marketing, and within that, how nations and cities and regions compete for businesses, attracted my attention and interest, and that, for me, was the area I decided to go down. So it was kind of 6 years in to my career where I really started to decide specialising. It wasn't before that.
So it wasn't you. Yeah, you were kind of experimenting a little bit after ULIP, after your masters, and found it's taken you 6 or 7 years. I think that's really nice to know. I think that happens with a lot of us, that we don't know exactly what it is we want to do straight away, and it takes some experimentation, and sometimes a whole lifetime of experimentation.
I think it's okay to sidestep in your career, especially in the early stages of your career, and maybe later on as well, this idea that you do something that you find interesting, not necessarily the only thing, and then in doing that you will find different avenues, different areas that may take you into a slightly different line of business, which is essential. I mean, I would say even investment promotion today is a form of communications and marketing, so at its core, you know, the interests that I haven't changed, they've just become a bit more refined.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Miriam, so over to you. So you've got quite a different career path, I suppose, to a lot of the other panellists. We talked about you moving to Ibiza, and then kind of coming back. You were promoting electronic music acts out there, and now you've come back and you're doing what we would call, I don't know how many people are familiar with this term, of like a portfolio career. So that's basically what we would call somebody who's doing a mixture of different things, like juggling lots of different balls, lots of different income streams, okay, in order to make a living. So you're doing, last time I checked in with you, it was I think a couple of things, and now it's about 4 different things, which include freelance head of communications for a fitness app. Okay, so you're kind of, which is called, I can't remember. Peach. Yeah. It's great. It's great. Bit of like plugging going on. That's fine. You're an agent for some DJs, like a kind of publicity agent for some DJs. You also do freelance copying, translating, and journalism as well. All of these different things to earn money, which is amazing. So, what's your favourite out of all of those things?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't even know how to describe it. I think I just, obviously I only graduated in 2015, so I guess maybe you could still say I'm in the experimentation stage if you look at that quite weird mix of things. But I literally just got into the music thing because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to be corporate and boring. So I was like, I like clubbing. I'm going to like write some like blogs and just like tell them that I know all about music. So then I just started like writing for them, and then through that I got to know loads of PRs in music, because I was liaising with them all the time, just go out all the time, talk to them all the time. Through my connections I managed to get this job as a correspondent in Ibiza, where I was actually a journalist for 3 months. It was absolutely brutal. I made €300 a month. I had about 2 hours sleep every night. I was sober through all of this as well, because I was too poor for anything. But yeah, and then obviously through that I then ended up getting a job at a music PR agency in London, which again specialised in electronic music. So I was there for 3 years, just worked my way up. And then I just got a bit fed up of being in an office all the time and being told when I could go on holiday and when I couldn't. So I just decided to take the jump and go freelance, and the clients literally just came. And actually I found out some interesting stuff about non-competes in the process.
About what?
Non-compete.
Can you explain to us what
clauses.
that means?
So actually in my contract at my old agency, it basically said that in the year following leaving the company, I couldn't work for any of the people I'd worked with there. But it turns out that this is actually non-enforceable in UK law anymore. So I didn't approach any clients, they approached me. So I just kind of thought about it, and I was like, I literally can't pass up money. So I took them on, and they were all my favourite clients. I knew them all really well anyway. And I had a cease and desist one day, and I just told them to go away. And they did.
So what? So your old company sent you like a letter saying stop. Taking, like, using it.
But it's just the nature of the music industry, basically, and nobody can get. Yeah, you can't prevent people from working with each other. You know, because it's basically deemed to be unfairly stopping people from working, because you can't be expected to not use your connections and expertise after you leave a company. So yeah, I took on a few DJs. They came to me. I didn't go to them. But either way, it doesn't matter. Even if I had gone to them, it actually wouldn't have made a difference. And then because I just put the word out there about being freelance, people would just, like, even just friends of friends would just refer me stuff. So I just pick up a piece of copy here and there. That's just stuff like, you know, writing someone's website up, and, you know, with Peach, they're a startup stage still, so I kind of write their investor decks and things. And, you know, all the social media is so easy to pick up. If you just tell people that, you know, I didn't even have any qualifications in copy. I was like, I can write.
So it's interesting, because you're doing quite a lot of, like, translating and journalism and things that perhaps people might think you need a master's for, or you need a specific degree for, but actually it seems like you just, in your case, if you get a reputation, you know, that's been good enough in your case.
Exactly. So I got into Peach through doing some copy for them, and then we just got on so well that I just started, they asked me to do some press as well, which was completely different because it's fitness. But I just had this database of contacts and just tried and managed to get some pretty good results. And then they just decided to make me a permanent part of the team. So
how are you using your languages day to day?
Not much.
Okay.
I'm going to be completely honest. It comes in handy, obviously, and there's just been times like I'll be liaising with another PR and they're like, oh, I saw on your website you say you do French. I've got a client in Switzerland who I really need some copy just translated to, and I'll just do it really casually, like, on the side. So I did that for a diamonds company recently, which is actually quite cool. But generally, I don't really use it that much. It just comes in handy here and there. But I think, as I said, it sounds so lame, but just like being able to critically analyse language and sentences means that, yeah, you know, I didn't need a copywriting qualification. I just kind of, you just know how grammar works, and nobody else knows this, amazingly, in the UK. So it just
yeah, it's not something we really get taught at school very much, is it?
People just don't. It's just shocking how many people don't understand how grammar works.
So I think, so it's a kind of indirect, it's been a bonus in terms of you, as you said, getting to know clients and meeting them on their level, but also this other indirect skills that you picked up from the degree about this critical analysis and being able to write well and understand the grammar that you use in copywriting and things. Okay.
And I just think it's just a bit better than an English degree because it's just more interesting. And you get all the cultural stuff, and yeah, everyone does really like to talk to you about it, and are always quite impressed when you say you've got a language. So,
okay, wonderful, thank you. And last but not least, Brandon. We're actually really lucky to get Brandon because you're just back from Paris, I think, where you.
Just back from Korea.
Sorry, I love that.
Very different.
So holding my research there from Korea. Okay, so tell us, what were you doing in Korea then?
I was there for a month researching about youth culture and like Adidas streetwear.
Okay.
Basically.
So for context, so Ruby Pseudo, which is the first kind of the kind of main job that you've done since uni.
Yeah.
Is that right? You are. Well, how would you explain it in your own words? Like, what does your company do, and what do you do within it?
So we basically, as my boss would say, we get paid to speak to people. That's basically what she says. But a client will come to us and say, we want to find out about this market. Can you tell us what it is, and can you give us strategy for our further marketing and strategize and help us? And so we get to go to loads of countries. We went across Asia all year this year. I'm going to America in a couple of weeks to go do some research there. I'm going to Germany next week, I think. I don't know if I'm just like one of those things where it's like you don't know where you're going the next week because a new project can come in. And it's just speaking to people, learning about them, learning their culture. You can spend a whole day with one person, you can spend a whole day with a group of friends, and it's anywhere from like the age of 8 up until like 50. And you just get to spend a day with them, ask them questions, and then feed that back to the client and be like, this is what people think of your brand, this is what people think of you. This is how we should change it, and this is how we can change it. and that's what we do as a company.
It's kind of investigating what people really think,
Yeah.
and
Rather
feeding
than-
and gathering information to feed it back to a company,
Yeah.
so that they can make improvements to their brand, their services and products.
It's basically better than just a survey online. We get to go in and ask them questions, go to their homes, speak to their parents, like go all around the world and just speak to people about their daily lives and how a phone company can help your life and how can Adidas make it better for you. And
Okay.
and stuff.
And so you're network manager, what does that mean?
So network manager, so our company has about 4,000 people who work for us, who are gatekeepers for wider networks. So we recruit for projects. So for an Adidas project, we have to interview streetwear people. So we'll ask the people that we've done those projects before to help us recruit for that. Or we've got a phone project on at the minute. So there's 8 states across America we have to interview. So we'll have our 8 people in those states, and they'll help us recruit the wider project.
Right.
So I look after those gatekeepers that look after the states and countries across the globe.
Okay.
So I will send them, I will help them with their advice if they need to go find other jobs. Like I'll help them write their references and their CVs, or
Okay.
I'll go to their country and I'll go help and I'll speak to them, have dinners with them, make sure they're happy.
Okay.
That kind of stuff.
Sounds lovely.
It's quite nice.
Lovely, yeah. So I know that you were involved in helping set up your company kind of in France and in Italy.
Yeah.
How do you use your languages day to day?
Well, I've been part of this company for nearly 10 years now, just because I used to be the person that was interviewed. And then I've kind of grown through the company that way. And then so when I was 16, I went to France for the company.
Okay.
Because of my French speaking, I could go there and I could get all my friends involved from France. And most of them I met online, but it was the first time of meeting them was setting up the agency there. And it was just setting up the network and creating gatekeepers and bringing out for drinks and having dinners with them and being like, this is Ruby Pseudo, this is who we are. And we just did the same in Seoul, like when I got back. So that was what the whole Seoul experience was for like a month there, working for Adidas and also setting up that network. I did the same for Italy. We never really did a project in Italy 2 years ago. Instagram came and was like, can you do some Italy research? Like, oh, yeah, great, but how on earth are we going to do that? We have no one in Italy. And because I had a language degree and I knew someone who had an Italian language degree, we kind of spoke over that. And she was like, yeah, come over, like, I'll be around. I've lived here for 7 years. Let's do it. And then that kind of helped to set up that network. And now we have like a good group of like 50 gatekeepers across Italy, which we can recruit whenever we want to go.
Right.
So my language degree has helped me because you find people because being an English person speaking another language is crazy for a lot of people across Europe. Like, oh my God, you're English and you speak French? Like, what the hell are you doing?
Okay.
Why do you need to speak another language? And so if you meet another English person who speaks another language, like, oh my God, yes, you've got the understanding why you need to speak another language. It's great. And that's one reason why a language degree is really good, and that's how I use it. And obviously I've been to France like 10 times this year. And a lot of the projects I have to do are with French clients or with French respondents, and I have to moderate those conversations. I have to transcribe and then translate them for the clients who are like either based in America or in the UK. And then, so I'm having to get that, because everything is just so nuanced with what people say, and especially with strategy and for marketing, you have to make sure that you have to relay that correctly across both languages. So that's where my language is coming.
Right, okay.
Well.
So it sounds like kind of you doing the interviewing as well, doing the research, but then also, kind of interpreting what people are saying and relaying it back
in a different
to
language,
HQ in a different language, back accurately. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like you're doing, using the languages a lot, and travelling a lot, actually, which I think is a bit of a common thread amongst the panel, has all travelled quite a lot for work in various forms or another. So I'm building up a little list here of all of the different ways that people are using languages, which is huge, actually, from just four graduates here. So we've kind of got critical analysis, research, interviewing, translation, learning about new cultures, in terms of like their economies and societies, branding, copywriting, and we could go on. But there's a huge range of kind of things that you guys have all been doing. So what I'm going to do is ask you just one quick question before we take a pause and open it up to you guys, because I'm sure you guys here and in ULIP have questions you'd like to ask as well. Can I ask you, if you weren't doing what you're doing today, what would you be doing? Okay? If you could, if you could just do anything now, what would it be?
Okay, I'll
Whoever wants to go. You guys jump in whenever you want to, completely up to you.
I actually always really wanted to to work in music. When I was doing my A-levels, I was doing...
I see.
I did a music A-level and French and Spanish A-level, and I just couldn't decide like what I wanted to do. And at the point I was like, will I go play in an orchestra in France to combine the two? Yeah, and even, I mean, I guess I kind of did that a bit on my year abroad because I didn't really know anybody when I went to France, and so I was like, hey, I play guitar and I sing, so I put my name on like this Find a Band website, and we ended up sort of playing in little cafes and things. And I always kind of wanted to pursue that a little bit, but then I also really love what I do now. So, but yeah, I would do something with music.
Okay. Well, let's see if something can happen by the end of the evening. You're in the right place as a music publicist. Anyone else who wants to go next?
I think I'd probably be doing a master's, I think.
Okay.
Because I really want to do something in anthropology and learn the kind of the theory behind it. Because I've learned it kind of in my job, but I think there's so much more I want to learn. And yeah, doing a master's in that and kind of getting a more academic background to it,
Okay.
which I think is quite interesting.
Yeah, and very possible from now. Yeah. You two, what would you be doing?
I don't have a good answer. I really wanted to be a professional dancer up until my year abroad, so until I realised that I wasn't going to make any money at all.
Well, I would have loved to have been an opera singer, but my voice, unfortunately, was never to be with my voice. Despite my mum's insistence that I should have been a great singer. No, I think seriously, I think towards the end of my bachelor's degree, I was getting really interested in the idea of interpreting alongside translating.
Right, okay.
And at that stage, I only had, I did a pure degree in French studies. And a lot of jobs in interpreting, you need 2 languages. So for those of you doing multiple languages, I mean, it's a really good avenue into things like the EU institutions and others. They often look for 2 languages. I find interpreting equally fascinating and hideously challenging. I am in awe of these people who are able to be spoken at and you know, then translate at the same time verbally. So it's an amazing profession, but in a different life.
Absolutely. I'm really glad that you brought up kind of interpreting as well, because I think it's an area that a lot of people here might be interested in, and it's certainly something that if like within careers we can talk to you about the steps of becoming a qualified interpreter, the informal routes to doing it and building your network, but also the more formal routes in terms of getting a qualification and making sure you speak those 2 languages. So what we're going to do is we're going to just take a pause now. So I'd like you to just talk to the person next to you. What has like stood out for you from what the panelists have said so far? What has struck a chord with you? Are there any things that you you want to ask that haven't been covered yet? Are there any questions that you have? And the reason for talking to the person next to you is just that it tends to help you kind of percolate these ideas and pick out the strands. And normally that means that we then get kind of like better questions, things that you really want to ask. So we're going to pass around some post-it notes because sometimes putting hands up doesn't let everybody get a chance to say what they want to say. So take a pause, have a chat with the person next to you and ULIP as well, and we will reconvene in a couple of minutes.
I'm so hungry. Is it acceptable to run and get a spring roll or something? It's really running to get a spring roll. I'm literally starving. No. It's going to be a bad example of these young minds. I am literally going to go and eat a spring roll with that. It's so embarrassing.
I can't hear it when I'm listening, but somehow every silent
It's like such a level. Apparently they start by training you by just doing it in the same language. And if I were speaking in English now and you were to recap to me what I said 3 seconds ago, that's really challenging. I'm a night when it comes to interpreters as well, so I do these conferences and I never get the microphone quite right, so you've got this woman or man in the booth in the corner just like and suddenly just completely cut me out. These stony faced people going, what's this guy going on about? No idea.
to start?
Yeah, well, we'll see if we get a good link. So you travelled to the Middle East as well? Of course, yes, and it's really well, and it lends itself well to podcasts as well, doesn't it? I mean, it's all about podcasts, all about, I hate the term thought leadership anyway. It's an interesting say for an hour, and because it's been around, they've been around for 50 years and they've had this like series of growth rate. Well, good that you've got it. That's Nicholls. So. It's a manic city.
Never bring roll so quickly in my life.
So jealous.
It's the first time I ever went skiing. I literally had 2 weeks. Or one and only time, so it was disastrous after that. Or maybe no, not when I was there.
Was it hard to explain it in like Korean? Because it's so specific.
It's like oddball.
Quite a few now. Yeah, so based here in London, but
no, it's like the
so a lot of my work this year has been
the sound like
oh no, and about to start something in Azerbaijan, so it's very every year.
There's like no, and then put the symbol in the basically, wherever I go, usually
yeah, you must have to research it.
Because gluten, I can dairy.
It's somewhere that, you wouldn't typically go
about half an hour down right down in Japan, I went to Tokyo like 7 days down.
So you must be like
my last one was from Mongolia to coming into the
and you look on the back, it's like, I started doing a bit. It's so quite easy. It's not like, it's difficult to say, but it's really easy to learn how to write it and to read it, because it's all like one symbol. So each symbol is 26. So it's Hangul, so it's just 26 characters. And they're all like sound quite the same, so when they're all put together, it's just the same.
Sounds a bit harder than French.
No, but it's but the alphabets, that's the first thing, but after that, once you learn how to say them,
you
could say like a sign quite easily.
You want to you go to Korea a lot then, because you want to fit this on campus at the last.
No, so I was there from like middle.
Oh wow, okay,
So I had end of September, like home back. So I was there.
I get your job. I just
I was going to be different.
It's very different. It's actually
that's the way it was. It was great. It's I don't know how I just kind of it was an opportunity.
Okay.
No, but that's a sign with the job though. You don't want to leave.
Well, because I was at uni, so it was them that came to here.
Okay, we're going to make a start so we can get as much time to ask your brilliant questions as possible. And I've had a flick through, and they're really excellent questions. So thank you so much. And we'll take some from ULIP as well. So the first question we're going to take from the audience is, do you see yourself living permanently in another country? Okay. Yes or no, and like if so, why or why not? So, and this you can just jump in as and when, and we don't need to get an answer necessarily from everyone.
Yes.
So, Brandon says yes.
Yeah, I do want to leave the UK. I feel like it's just quite stifling with all of the kind of politics that's going. I think it's quite hard to feel at home here, especially as someone like me who does like to see the world a lot more, and the culture that's out there, and just how exciting it is, and just to be in a place where it's just so overshadowed about how being British is British, and trying that we should get ourselves out of Europe and just seeing that kind of discourse happening in the UK. It's quite sad, and I always thought it was a very open place, and then obviously this has happened, like this past 2-3 years, it's just been quite a messy place for the UK, and I would like to leave here, and maybe in the future I'd come back, but I think there's other places out there which I'm more excited to be a part of than the UK.
So you're kind of actively looking, do you think? Are you
yeah, my job is remote, so my boss is like, when you find a place that you want to go settle down in, you can still work for me, but just from another country.
Okay, so that you have the opportunity to pack up and leave, which is, I think, something that we can all kind of think about. Actually, there's more and more work that's happening online that, you know, if you're specifically looking for a remote opportunity, the world is kind of your oyster then. Just need a Wi-Fi connection. So, okay, that's really good to know.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so clear and resounding from Brandon. Anybody else got thoughts on that?
Sorry. I again, I don't have a good answer. Basically, my answer is no, but only because...
So no, you wouldn't want to move?
I wouldn't go permanently. I think that there's so much to be said for going abroad and living abroad. And I would live abroad again for like a set period of time, but it's really embarrassing, but I'm just really close to my family and like my friends here, and when I was in Paris I had the best time, but I just didn't feel like there was any substitute for having people around you when things go wrong. Actually, things went really badly wrong for me in Paris, and I had such a low. It was so bad, and I didn't have anyone around me that really knew me or could help me, and just things like that. It just kind of made me think I don't really want to be far away if anything happened to my family or anything. I mean, this is completely unrelated to a language degree, but... No,
that's fine. It's life, you know, and the degree is just
I could
part
go.
of life.
With my job now, I could go, but I'm not going to.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's not... I don't want to stay in the UK permanently. I'm pretty sure I'll live somewhere else at some point. I think there's not one place I see myself kind of settling permanently at the moment, although I'll probably retire somewhere and stop travelling. But yeah, I think kind of the nature of my job as well is sort of opening up new markets. I do get the opportunity to travel around. So yeah, like the last job was kind of in Paris a lot, and here like there's talk of opening up the Middle East office now. So I would see myself maybe going to work somewhere for say 2-3 years, and then somewhere new kind of thing. But not like there's not one particular place permanently that I'm looking at.
And Dan?
Well, I went abroad and came back home twice, and when I came back after my 7-year jaunt around Europe to the UK, I thought, this is it, UK's home now, this will be my home for forever. And then lo and behold, that wasn't the case, and I went and lived in Indonesia for 2 years. So never say never. I think at the moment I have no plans to live abroad. I'm very settled here, and you know, like everyone pretty much here, I've got the ability to travel and get to know places well. But never say never. It could well happen. I'd be open, I think, if the right opportunity came up to move forward again.
Well, yeah, lovely. It's just so lovely to have the possibility, right, to do it, which most people don't have, or well, would find it a lot harder than you guys with the capital that you've built up through your various work and lifestyle, and then a range of different answers. So thanks. Christian, let's take one from... Oh, okay, I'll read them then. So Birgitte, can we take one from the audience here?
So one question we had was, what do you wish you had known before you started your career?
Oh, great question. So what do you wish you'd known about life, or you know, you think freestyle on this, life, or I suppose work and jobs and careers?
I wish I'd known about the non-compete sooner.
Oh yeah.
I think I wish at some point sort of somebody told me like it's okay if you're not happy in a job to kind of sidestep, that you don't necessarily need to stay in something for a long time just to have a long time on your CV. That's something I've come to realise, that sometimes things are just not right, and you know, I'm not saying like jump around all the time, but occasionally something, you know, is getting you down, or you're just unhappy in the job. So I think I've always seen that as kind of a bad thing, sort of have on the CV to leave quite quickly. But I think, yeah, I kind of wish somebody maybe reassured me, like, it's okay, you can go do something else.
I think thanks for being so honest about that, because I think that's something that people don't really kind of own up to, that you know, that sometimes jobs just don't work out, even if they sound great. Like, you just don't know until you get there, and it's fine to move on. So thanks for being so honest with that. Dan,
I wish someone told me how important it was to have self-care.
Right.
Because there needs to be a point where you do have to shut off from work every now and again. Because I'm constantly working, and I'm like, oh God, I'm just really tired, but I don't know why. And I'm like, oh, because I've not stopped working for like 10 days. Like,
okay.
That's why I'm tired. And like, because when you're at university, you're just constantly working and partying and working, and kind of your work-life balance isn't the same as when you start work, which is normally 9 to 5. So you're working at weekends at school or uni, doing essays on a Sunday, what you're doing on Monday. Like, your kind of work-life balance is hard, and then when you do kind of the job that I do, you're also working weekends, and you're travelling and you're working weekends. And I always feel someone was like, you're at uni, this is where the time you should have self-care, this is how you should do it, these are certain ways you could do it, because meditation isn't for everyone, and it's definitely not for me.
Right.
But having that moment of like just sitting down and watching a Netflix series and not feeling guilty about it, that's kind of like a nice thing that I like doing. It's like just a moment just to sit back and be like, that's what I want to do. And like, I just wish someone was like, it's absolutely fine to binge a Netflix series, because that's absolutely fine, don't worry about it.
Okay, so self-care from
self-care.
the get-go.
I mean, mine's the worst idea of self-care, but there's many ways.
There's nothing
out there.
wrong with a Netflix binge. I think it's fine. Dan?
I think they're all, I mean, I was going to kind of say part of what you were going to say anyway, so I wouldn't have much to add. The only thing I would, I suppose, say is early on in your career, I think it's really important to try and find a mentor for whatever you're doing. And by mentor, I don't mean, it shouldn't actually be a colleague in whichever company you're working in or whichever business you're working in. But find someone who's got a few grey hairs, not necessarily grey hairs, but someone who's got a bit of experience under their belt in the line of work you're doing, who you can just have a chat with over a drink after work or a coffee or whatever. Just say, where am I going? You know, what am I doing with my work? Is it the right avenue for me? Are there other things I haven't thought of? Because none of us can think of every option that's open to us. So find a mentor early on would be a piece of advice, and it's something I probably did later than I should have.
Okay, that's really, really good. So proactively go out and find someone to have a bit of a chat to that's not in your direct line of work.
Yeah, well, it can be related to your line of work, but not necessarily your company, your day-to-day job, exactly.
Okay. Just a quick nod from you guys then. Like, do you feel like you have a mentor, like someone that you talk to about your career and stuff?
I did for a while. My boss set me up with someone. Queer marketing research.
Okay. Cool.
And it's like, yeah, it was just, she set it up, and we had conversations for like over a year and a half, and then he just set up a new company, so he doesn't have as much time anymore.
Okay.
But yeah, it was just a really nice thing. She found someone who's like on a similar path as I am, and
nice.
helped kind of form a bond there between someone who's in my career and my thing, but not so affiliated to my job. So yeah.
No, I don't think I really have one now. I think that I should.
Okay, well, that's your action for tomorrow then. I mean, I'm saying
to get one as well, but I've never had a formal mentor. It's not really that kind of sector, but I have had people in the industry when I was coming up as like writing for free that really helped me, that were a bit older and would point me in the direction of opportunities, and you know, could pass on their experience, which was really appreciated and definitely helped me. Unfortunately, one of them was an ex-boyfriend, so I guess that's not exactly a mentor. But then there was another who was worked at Ninja Tune, and I'm sure a few people, if you know music, it's quite a big label, who basically got me a job at Mixmag just by sheer goodwill, which was so nice. But again, that just comes from like literally just going out and just networking and finding your people.
So There's a question now, which is for Miriam actually. So there's a question from ULIP in Paris, and it was somebody asking, what is it like juggling so many different roles? You know, you're doing at least 4 or 5 things, and what advice would you give to similar students who are interested in doing a variety of things and testing a few things out, rather than like committing to one thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to you do need to set boundaries in terms of pay. The journalism I do for fun, so I just do it when I know I've got time or a gap in my schedule. And, you know, I've taken on more this month because it's Christmas, and I'm like, I need extra money, I just spent loads of money on my hair. But to be honest, it's not, the only thing that can be difficult is clients think that you're their only, they're your only client. So there have been days when I actually had a client break an NDA about the Saudi royal family to Business Insider, which was pretty bad. But then also I had, like, you know, DJs are quite egotistical people, so they'll just they'll call you at no matter whatever the time of day, and like be like, can you do this for me now?
How do you manage that kind of in terms of boundaries?
I think you have to sort of give the illusion of giving, but not do it all the time.
Okay.
You have to just know when to prioritise certain things. Like, my inbox is always mental, and people can wait, you know? I think that's maybe another piece of advice I should have given myself when I was younger, because I used to really work myself into the groundless agency, and I was really not getting paid enough, because any email from a client I'd really be worried and think I'd need to reply straight away. But, you know, you can just drop people a quick WhatsApp and be like, I've just got something else on right now, but I'll be able to get this done for you by this time. And you just set yourself, you just tell them when it's going to be delivered by, but also let them know, you know, gently let them know you've got other stuff on.
So managing expectations.
Yeah, managing expectations. Oh, also undersell and over-deliver. That's also my other thing.
Okay, yeah.
So then there's like, if you're not giving them all the time in the world, but then you're getting them great results and they don't tend to care so much.
Okay. And this is to you and Brandon, a follow-on question then, because I think, Brandon, you did some freelancing while you were at uni, I think. So how did you actually learn the fabric of how to charge, how to do your taxes, you know, how to do all the invoicing stuff? Because that's not always obvious.
No.
How did you learn it?
I just had a friend who did it and was just helping with my receipts and everything, and I was like, what the hell am I doing here? And it was just like a long afternoon of, this is where this should go, this is how you should do this.
Okay.
And then obviously my boss helped me with like the people that were helping me with like my invoices, and was like, oh, nice to have some like younger doing it.
So get someone who knows.
Get someone who knows to help you.
Anything else?
Look online a lot, because there's a lot of help in there sometimes. But it's always good to have that, exhaust the online, and then go to find that one person and they can help you and make sure that they know what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm quite lucky. I know a lot of people that, my mum's freelance and always has been, so I've not had to deal with my taxes yet though. So we'll find out.
Cool. Okay, let's take another question from the audience. Thanks, Birgitta.
Okay, so we've got another question here. Did you do a lot of preparation, e.g. job hunting, in your final year? If so, what steps did you take, or did you wait until after you graduated?
Great question.
I was in a state of panic throughout my final year, so I was really, really like going out, like not for fun, but like to meet people and beg for jobs, and just emailing loads of editors, and I was writing for 4 different publications through my finals, and I also had to go to Ibiza in the middle of my final exams to cover a conference. So it was very much throughout my final year. I spent about as much time on that as I did on my degree work, actually. But it was, in 2015, the job market really wasn't great for graduates, so I just had so many horror stories of people that graduated, so I really wanted to just get started.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I was really, really desperate to get on a graduate scheme. I don't like it seemed to be the be all and end all of like getting a job when I was leaving uni, and I was absolutely desperate to find one, and I found one, and I went way out of my way to do it, and I was like travelling from East London to Windsor just to do this graduate scheme, and I hated it, and I left, and it was like the best thing ever.
So you really like
Yeah, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I thought it would be great to get on one of these schemes where you'd sort of train up. I think that was the problem. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so sort of committing to that so kind of early on didn't really work for me. I mean, I have friends who've done other things, like got into banking and sort of done that from the ground up. For a graduate scheme, it's worked out really well. For me, I don't really remember why it was the be-all and end-all for me. Right, yeah. But that didn't really work out, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something about the pressure of other people as well, you know, getting on schemes, so. and that must be the solution. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting to hear. Dan?
Yeah, in my case it was arguably a bit easier because this was at the master's stage where I was in the last 4 or 5 months, I suppose it was, and I was looking at, you know, my first career step. But everyone was almost in the same boat because I was doing a master's in European affairs. Everyone was essentially either flying to, or that was often too expensive, but having phone calls with prospective employers in Brussels or Luxembourg or elsewhere. So yeah, I mean, we were all egging each other on to kind of, you know, find our first step on the ladder, as it were. So and you know, some people were obviously competing for the same internships or first junior positions, but broadly we were helping each other quite a lot as well. So.
But what about when you were at ULIP and you obviously applied to do this master's in Poland? Like, how early on did you know that you wanted to do that, and did you have to?
Yeah, that was it was within the first few months of the final year, so it was kind of, you know, September, October of the final year.
Okay, so you had that plan.
Applications kind of going at the beginning of that year. So yeah.
Okay, great. No.
No, I worked freelance for the company I work for now.
Right.
For Pseudo.
Okay.
And then she was like, at the end of your degree, you can join here as a full-time member of staff. And I was like, yeah, great. And yeah, I was very lucky. It was a very good opportunity to get, so I didn't have the whole stress of worrying with my final year. Either is I'm going to have a full-time job or still freelance for them. Yeah. And she just wanted me to join straight away after I got to.
So you had that great connection. Yeah. They trusted you already.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is another question from ULIP. For those who travel frequently, does it ever lose its appeal or get too much? Like, are you over the travelling, or you still really love it?
Sometimes again. So my last job, I was like, this is too much, and I had to make the decision whether I want to move to Paris or whether I want to stay here and carry on travelling, because it was just very sort of last minute sometimes when I have to go to Paris. So it would be cancelling sort of things with friends and family. Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have this in the diary for 2 months, but I have to go to Paris now because it was my client emergency.
Yeah.
And I think it does lose its appeal, when you're away like that, it's kind of so often. It's tiring as well. It's great to have the opportunity to do that, but I think when it's very, very frequent, sometimes it becomes a bit much, and you feel a bit lonely. That sounds a bit sad. But you're sort of away from friends and things so often, and you're like constantly on a plane or a train or something. I find I end up working so many hours when I'm travelling because you are alone, and you'll go back to a hotel room or something. Oh, I'll just check my emails, and then it's 10 p.m. and you've been working all night. So yeah, it does kind of. I mean, I still love it. So that came out completely wrong, but it gets to a point sometimes where you need to cut it back or kind of rethink sort of where you would hate so much for the job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still get the travel bug. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't do what I do, really. But I think, there's definitely the downsides that Megan mentioned there. And it can be, lonely sitting at 11 o'clock at night with a room service, looking at your emails when you could be back in London going out with your mates. There are the downsides, but you get to see all these new interesting cultures, places. If you're lucky enough to spend weekends, in those places to go out and explore. Those countries, it can be fascinating. It can sometimes get a bit intense, and of course, depending on where you go in the world, the time zone changes. The jet lag will get you down in a big way. So if you're flying 8 hours and then expected to be in a meeting bright and breezy the next day, that's take Pro Plus. That's all I can do. Good. But it's still fascinating. I still love it.
Brilliant.
I think basically what both MCs said, it's great. I've never not loved travelling. I think I say that now. I'm like 24, but it's amazing. Like, I get to go see other cultures and it's great. But obviously I pay rent in a flat in London and I'm rarely there. And I have all my friends here. and I'm going to miss out on all my Christmas stuff this year because I'm going to be travelling so much. So there is those downsides of the really sad things, but at the same time, like, you're only young now, and like, you have to experience as much as you can, and then you can kind of forge your own way later in life of where you want to travel to and how you travel. Right now.
Sure.
Still,
yeah. Lovely. I think we've got time for about 2 more questions. So I'm going to take one from Brigitte and then one from the audience here. So
another question here: how selective should you be when taking jobs, especially after graduating?
How selective should you kind of dive into the first one that you get? Interesting.
It depends on your situation, I think. I mean, I took that spa breaks job because I wanted to work in selling spa holidays, but because I absolutely didn't want to have to go move back home with my parents. I really wanted to sort of try and stand on my own 2 feet and pay my rent. So, I mean, I think sometimes when you first graduate, it's fine for a while, and actually it doesn't necessarily need to be your sort of final job even. I think it's more and more people need experience. It's great that you have a degree, it's great you speak a language, but I think they want some kind of working experience, whether or not it's related to the job. That being said though, I think sort of as you gain that experience, you can afford to be a bit more selective, and definitely with the last kind of couple of jobs that I've worked at, I've been quite picky. But again, because I had the luxury of having a job while I was looking for it. So yeah, I think it depends on how you can support yourself, really.
Yeah, I think first job after graduation, don't even worry. It can be something really crap, honestly. I just think any experience is just, you can just change it into anything you want in a job interview. Like, any experience is so much better than no experience. I've got friends now that are just highly educated and graduated at the same time as me, and then did a master's, but because they've obviously done like temp jobs, but they've not got any actual career experience, so they just keep falling at the last hurdle in job interviews, and they're being really selective, but they would have just been better off just getting a job. But if there is something you really want to do that isn't that job, you have to keep that going on the side. I would say, like, I've got a friend who works in marketing for the sake of just keeping herself afloat, but she does it for some quite boring company, but she really wants to be in music as well, so she has managed to start managing an artist on the side and keeps up the journalism, which means that her contacts stay fresh, so that she can, you know, when things are more stable, she can try and make that jump.
Okay.
So I actually don't think you should worry about it after graduation that much.
So get a job that can give you
just
experience is your advice, but make sure that you are getting experience in some way in the area that you want to go into.
Don't give up on the dreams, but just be prepared to maybe just work harder for a bit until you get the ideal job.
Okay. Do you agree, Dan? As in, like, you went down the master's route, could you have just got any job, or was it quite important that you got, like, a decent...
No, I mean, Brussels was a fiercely competitive place, not only with people who I was studying with, but from other institutions and colleges and things as well. So I think it's definitely right. I mean, be broad-minded in terms of what you take as your first job, because it's more likely not to be good experience, whether it's short-term, whether it's longer-term. I suppose the only thing I would say is, depending what the opportunity is, did you proactively go out and search for it, in which case, you know, you're more than likely to want to go for it because you wanted it. If they've approached you, hopefully it's in broadly the line of work you're looking to get into, because you're, you know, on a mailing list or whatever it is. I mean, if they've come to you, hopefully it's in an area that's of interest. I mean, I think you can afford to, if you really know it's not of interest and it's going to involve some sacrifice, like going abroad for a period of time, and you don't think it's worth it, you know, to take a view. But I think a lot of experience, especially at the first stage in your career, is good. So yeah, I probably agree.
Okay. Anything else to add? Okay. So I'm going to just take one. So we have a lot of questions that we've collated. So what I think we'll do is we will put them maybe up on the wall when we finish, and I think all of our panelists can stay after the end of the session. And if you've got a specific, it will be interesting for other people to see what you've written. And if you've got specific questions, you can come and approach our panelists yourselves. So, because we haven't got time to ask them all today, unfortunately. But is there anyone from the audience who would like to have the final question? Okay, in which case I'm going. Is that one? Yeah, go on.
Just a very tiny question.
Go on, a tiny question.
How old are you all?
How old? Up to you guys if you want to answer that. No pressure.
I'll go first. I'm 25.
I'm 24.
28.
Oh God, they would be one in their 30s, wouldn't they? I'm 26.
Okay, I'm 32. So yeah, 32. So okay, cool. Well, thanks for the transparency. So I think that what we'll just do to finish up, I would say, what would be okay, you've got a bunch of languages graduates here. What would you say is the most exciting thing for them, kind of about to finish their degrees and go off into this world? What would you say is the most exciting thing about having studied language and like your future career?
It's too difficult.
There's so much to enjoy, I think. Use what you've learned for learning a culture so in depth, and then go and explore other cultures around the world. Like, I've gone to Korea, and because I've been able to understand a culture before, I can look at things and unpick it differently in Korea. And like the excitement I've got of where Korea is right now, and like how exciting the world's going to be once Asia kind of blossoms further and further up the kind of getting rid of the white patriarchy. I think Korea and Japan are going to be two incredible nations to look at in terms of where the world's going to go. And I think use your cultural awareness and intelligence and use that wisely and effectively. And you'll see the world in a very different way if you use that.
Lovely. Thank you. Anyone else?
I had like an unrelated answer, which was just it's so nice when you stop being a student and you literally just have a salary, and it doesn't, even if you don't like your job that much, you're probably going to find it a relief compared to if you're like me and you tried to juggle a paying job with non-paying internships and your degree. I would feel really optimistic. Don't be scared of it, because actually it's easier, I would say. So there's not related to languages, but
yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. General advice is great as well.
Yeah, go out and travel the world, use your languages, and I mean, you probably don't need me to tell you that if you've learnt one language, you've also learnt the art of learning a language. So you in the future, whether you're travelling to Bali in Indonesia, going island hopping, or whether you're looking for work in a far and distant land, the languages will help you and you'll have fun along the way. So.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think the same. I think to kind of second that, don't limit yourself to just sort of being in the UK or just doing something for the experience of it. Just have a look at what jobs are going in whatever countries it is, the languages that you speak, because I think it's kind of probably the easiest point to move abroad would be kind of when you finish your degree and you haven't had so many things kind of tying you down, and just you can try loads of different things, and yeah, it's a good point to kind of experiment with your career, I suppose, before you sort of get stuck in a path, if that makes sense.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your words of wisdom, your honesty, and sharing your stories with us. Thank you guys so much for your brilliant questions, both from the audience here in London, but also from Paris, where people have been listening in as well. I think what I'm taking away from this panel is just that the languages that you've studied, you're using in a huge variety of different ways, like both directly with clients, with research interviewing, but also in more indirect ways as well, of just having a bit of a broader world, like global understanding. And that it's giving you a lot of capital, I think, to move around and to decide to take things or leave things more than a lot of other people will have. And you might decide to stay here or move abroad, but you've got that opportunity to do that, which I think is a wonderful thing. So, as I said, thanks for being honest. As our panelists are going to stay around, I've just got two quick announcements to make for people who are in London, just to let you know that there are 2 deadlines that are going on that careers are promoting at the moment that might be interesting. One is a thing called, underneath all these post-it notes, called Q Hack, which is like a social hack that's going on over a weekend in December. And that's for anyone who's interested in kind of entrepreneurial, like starting up a social enterprise or a business possibly, or wanting to freelance, it's like a 3-day boot camp to help get you started in that. And the deadline for is on Sunday to be involved in it. Totally free, you get loads of coaching, it's apparently really, really fun. And then another scheme which is called Q Taster, which is an opportunity if you're not sure yet what you might want to do, and you want exposure to going around lots of different companies, big and small, in different sectors, and just seeing like what their offices are like and what do they actually do day to day, because as we know, it's like pretty hard to figure out what people actually do until you get talking to them. There's a scheme called Q Taster. The deadline for that has just been shifted to Monday. There's still some places on it if you want to go. I strongly recommend signing up for it. It looks good on your CV, and it's just interesting to see like where people work, and you get loads of freebies when you go to the office. So consider both of those things. Can we give our panellists a massive round of applause for their time? Coming along on your evening off. We are going to the back now for some wine and nibbles, and thanks very much. Like love stuff and work stuff. It's really good.